In this second section of the video lecture, I'm going to continue talking about muscular tissue, but in this case, I'm going to talk about the components of the muscular tissue. And I'm going to focus on the skeletal muscle tissue. And to do so, I will go from a very general perspective to a more specific one, from a macroscopic. So here I'm going to start talking about the fascicle, yeah, how all these fibers are all together. And then I will move into the microscopic and talk about the sarcomeres, how this unit of contraction work. So in the beginning, I will give you a little bit of an introduction about the muscles, and then I will talk about how they are attached to bones and to tendons. Then I will move into the different type of connective tissue that are surrounding if different level of organization the of the muscle tissue. So the muscle tissue is like a rope that has that have different level of organization. So here outside you have the one layer of connective tissue, then you have another one covering, and in between that you have another layer. So you have three layers of connective tissue surrounding the muscles. And finally, I will talk about the muscles going from the macro perspective that are the fascicles. And then I will move to the muscle fibers, to the myofibrils, and I will finish talking about the sarcomere. Okay, so let's start. And let's start talking about the introduction and how bones and tendons are attached to muscles. To understand the structure of a muscle tissue or the skeletal muscle tissue, I want you to think about these two objects that have properties that are similar to what you are going to see in the skeletal muscle tissue. That in a Russian doll, you find that when you go to a lower level of organization, you see something slightly different, but with a lot of similarities. And you go there and you see it something similar, and you go lower and you see something similar. Something like that also happen in muscles, in the skeletal muscle tissue, and something like that also happened with a rope, that you will see that it looks very similar to a skeletal muscle tissue, that although it looked like that there is only one and maybe two strands together, or maybe three, what is happening is that each of these strands is formed by smaller strands, yeah, each one of these, so it becomes stronger, and each one of these smaller strands is even formed by smaller strands that make it stronger, and it goes continue going like that and like that. So again, you find that there is a lot of levels of organization that are all working together. So let's go and start seeing the structure of the skeletal muscle after this introduction. Now, following the previous idea, here you will find one, two, three, and finally four levels of organization. One that is macroscopic, that it will be one, sorry, that is the large, the microscopic, and here the microscopic, the smallest one. So in the beginning, you have the skeletal muscle, and if you go and take one small fiber, you will zoom in into this fiber here. And when we zoom in into this fiber, we can take one of these tiny muscle cells, yeah, that are just within a muscle fiber. Here, each one of those are proteins that are organized into an organelle called myofibrils, yeah. So when we take all these proteins here, what you're going to get is this structure called the myofiber. And here, if you see these blue sections, yeah, this section is called a sarcomere. Here, this is the sarcomere. Here we are zooming in the sarcomere. Yeah, these sarcomeres, they are very small, and they run the length of a cell and contain sarcomeres that are connected in series. So here you have one, here you will have the second one, and here you will have the third one. Yeah, and they can have a very small size, so they can be 1.2 micrometer in diameter, and you can have from from 100 to 1,000 in a single muscle. Okay, so you can have many, and this is the sarcomeres. The sarcomere is the unit. Let's write here unit is the unit of a contraction of the muscles. That this is very important, and we are going to talk about that. Now let's go and see the sarcomeres, and we are going to describe all these sarcomeres. There will be several slides later that I will talk about the sarcomeres. And the sarcomeres have two types of proteins that are very important to remember. The one here that you see, that the purple one here, that are very thin, that are called thin filaments, that are actin, and this one that are thicker. So these one are the thick filaments that are myosin. So actin and myosin, accompanied by other proteins, are the unit that produce the muscle contraction. Okay, so I hope that you took notes. Just to summarize, because there was a lot of information in this slide, I told you that within a muscle fiber, here, proteins are organized into organelles called myofibrils. I also told you that each myofibril round the length of a muscle cell and contain sarcomeres that are connected in series. So I show you here, for example, you have one, you have two, you have three, and only in this section, and you can have 100 to 1,000, yeah. And in addition, I told you that sarcomeres are and let me delete here that maybe there is a lot of things, that are the contractile units of striate muscles. Yeah, so that is very important. Please, again, take notes of that. And finally, I told you that they are made up of thick and thin proteins. That those one are located here. So thin here, the purple ones, and here the thick one that are the red ones. Okay, so don't worry. I know that there is a lot of information. We are going to start breaking each one of these components into small pieces to try to understand them much better in the following slides. Something that we talked before, but I wanted to remind you, is that the skeletal muscle is not only muscles, it have other components. Yeah, so it's an organ that consists of various integrated tissues. And if you remember this slide before, this schematic, in addition to the skeletal muscle, you will have blood vessels here, you will have nerve fibers, and here we will talk about these blue regions that I am making these. Will be connective tissue, and inside of that there will be more connective tissue. So there will be 3 layers of connective tissue. This is a slide that I took from your textbook, and here there are all the different components that we will talk about the muscle tissue. However, here you only have to focus on 3 sections. That are the sections of outside that we are still not talking about the muscle. So we need to talk about the green region, that is the region of connective tissue. So let's put here, this is just connective tissue that attach the to the tendons. Here in blue you will have the tendon, and here we can add another one in purple here, that it will be again connective tissue. And later we will talk about the names. But the important here is that remember that the function of a skeletal muscle is to pull on bones. And how they do it? They use tendons. And how they attach tendons to the bones and to the muscles? They have collagen that is going to intertwine. So let's imagine collagen in red. So the collagen is going to intertwine from the tendons into the connective tissue of the muscle, and here you're going to have collagen intertwining from the connective tissue that is covering the muscle to the tendon. Remember, when you cook delicious meat, you try to avoid to have tendons there. Why? Because they are very gluey. Remember, because the function of the tendons is to form as a glue that allow the muscles to pull on bones. Okay, so to summarize, I told you that in the skeletal muscles that work with tendons, the function is to pull on bones. And to do that, they require um, so in the to move the muscles, here you have connective tissue that I put in purple. You have three layers, and these three layers have, of course, collagen, and those collagen is going to intertwine with the tendon that here you see it in blue. Okay, and the same thing is going to happen with the connective tissue of the bones. Yeah, so at the other end, here, let's put it in green. I show you that the bone has something called periosteum, peri that cover, that surrounds, osteum is bone. So the connective tissue that surround the muscle will attach to the tendons through collagen. So it becomes like a glue that is very difficult to break. So how movement occur? You have muscle contraction. So here you have the muscle contraction, and this muscle contraction is going to transfer through the connective tissues to the tendon, and the tendon is going to pull the periosteum that later pull the bones. Yeah, and this is going to cause the bone movement. And this is how every time that we move, every time that you move your fingers, this is what is happening. So we finished the introduction, and at this point, you should know that muscles are organized in different structures, that there are different levels of organization, and you also should know that the muscles to move, to cause the movement of the body, require a strong connection between muscles, bones, and tendons. Now, we're going to move into the connective tissue. And I'm going to tell you about these three sections, these three layers of connective tissue: epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium. Okay, so to remember these three names of the connective tissue, epimysium, perimysium, and endomysium, you might be, oh my God, why there are so many names? However, I want to show you that if you use your Greek roots, maybe these names are not so difficult. So for example, if you remember the word epitaph, that an epitaph is this rock that it goes on top of your thumb. Yeah, taph, I mean, come from taphos, that means thumb, and epi means that it goes over. Yeah, that it goes on top. So it's the rock that goes on top of your thumb. Yeah, it helped me to remember that epi goes on top. So when you see this epi, so it's something that goes on top of mysium, and mysium, of course, is muscle. Yeah, so it's the connective tissue that goes on top of the muscle. So it goes here on top. Now, perimysium. So mysium will be muscle, and peri, if you remember, perimetry or perimeter. So peri means around, and metry means measure. So the perimeter is this section that you are measuring around. We are not measuring what is inside, you are measuring all these sections that are outside, that are around. So the perimysium is the connective tissue that is around the muscle. So the epi goes outside, the peri goes around, and finally the endomysium, that is the easiest one, that is the muscle, that the connective tissue that goes inside the muscle. Yeah. So here it goes, it will be separating each one of the muscle fibers. Okay, so hopefully this was useful. Epi, peri, and endo. They are all those three are just connective tissue. So now we are finishing the this parenthesis of Greek roots, now we're going to go back into biology. Now we're going to start talking about the first layer of connective tissue, the one that go above the muscle, that is the epimysium. Here you can see the layer if you peel it. And from there you can see that it's a dense and irregular layer that allow to wrap the muscle. And wrapping the muscle is very important because it gives them two things. The first one allowed the muscle to contract and do it in a powerful way, but allowing them to maintain its structural integrity. The second thing that it allows is allowed to separate the muscle from other tissues and allow to move the muscle independently from other structures. So this is the epimysium. Now let's go to the second one. So here I'm going to talk about both perimysium and endomysium. So let's start with the perimysium. The perimysium goes around the muscle fascicle. So look, here's the muscle fascicle. So here it goes from here to here. So it goes all those, and the perimysium is surrounded that red region that have all those muscles. In our walls, in our world, the perimysium will be painted in yellow, and it will be around this area. So it's surrounding the entire fascicle. So remember, the perimysium is connective tissue that support each fiber bundle within the muscle belly. Okay, so it's surrounding all the fascicle. Now, inside of each one of these, you will find a muscle fiber. Yeah, so an individual muscle fiber that you can see here. Do you see? This will be, let's put it in black, that is easier. So here you will see one, here you can see another one, here you can see another one, here you see the fourth one, and here you will see the fifth one. All of these are muscle fiber, and each muscle fiber will also have the connective tissue that is going to wrap them around it. And so they can work together, they can work as a group, and they are not all over the place. So here, instead of perimysium, you're going to have endomysium. So here you can see it. You will see it in green. Yeah, it's surrounded that area. And here you can see the endomysium here and the endomysium here as is shown in your textbook. Okay, so to summarize, perimysium is connective tissue that is around the muscle fascicle, or all the bundle of all the muscle fibers, while the perimysium represent also connective tissue, but in this case it surrounds each of the independent muscle fibers. So we already finished talking about the layers of connective tissue surrounding the muscle. So we start with the epimysium, then we finish the perimysium, so we're done with this one, and then we talk about the endomysium. But there are more structures in this schematic that your textbook one that you remember. So one of them is that there is a lot of mitochondria. And why? Because muscles for contraction require ATP, so we need to have a lot of mitochondria around. We also have our structures that we previously talked, that are the satellite cells that are located here. Just to make sure that you can see it is this cell, and if you see it's wedged there between the basement membrane and the plasma membrane of the muscle fiber. So it's just ready there. And if you remember, this cell, different from the muscle, adult muscle, this one is a mononucleated cell. Yeah, so and you remember what is the function? Of course that you remember. They are the stem cells of the muscle, so they are ready if the muscle need to grow more, or if they should be repaired in some way. So they are ready to go from immature cells into and differentiate into mature muscle cells. So remember, just we talk about the satellite cells that are mononucleated, that they are located between the basement membrane and the plasma membrane of the muscle. And remember that they act as a stem cell that are responsible for muscle growth. And in case that you need to uh, finish the development, there was an injury, they are always there to finish the work as a backup. Okay, to finish, I'm going to talk a little bit more about mitochondria, but before that, I want to show you this movie. Do you see that those are muscles? Yeah, all these lines, strided muscles that we have seen, these are the muscles of a fruit fly in a larval stage that are moving. And why I'm showing you that? Because they are very important to understand diseases related to problems in muscles that have dysfunctions in the mitochondria. Yeah, because as I said before, the mitochondria is involved in so many processes. So in your textbook, they tell you, look, here you find mitochondria in these schematics in so many places. Yeah, and in addition to that, they tell you, they are involved not only in one process, but in many cellular process in the muscle. So for example, they're involved in the metabolism. And I remind you that for the energy supply, if you don't have oxygen, the mitochondria, yeah, they cannot work anymore. So you need to start making lactic acid. That is also important. Uh, they are also involved in the regulation of energy sensitive pathways. So that is also important because there is if you study later cell biology with me or cancer biology, you will see that in the in in the mitochondria, there are signals that trigger cell death. So although the mitochondria is in charge of producing energy, it's also it can also trigger others or responses, and in particular, this one is very important. All these reactive oxygen species that are involved in a lot of in a lot of signaling, that are also very important. So why we are studying even fruit flies to study all those things, because if the mitochondria are not working, the muscles don't work pretty well. And to help these people to try to understand their diseases, it's easier to work in fruit flies that, as you see, they also they have many muscles, and they also we study how those muscles move when there are problems in the mitochondria. We can create mutations in the mitochondria, and we can study that to help patients suffering from a myopathy, that is a disease in the muscles. So we finished the second section, and you already know I already give you the introduction of this muscle organization, all the different components. I told you the importance of bones and tendons. Then in this section, I told you that the connective tissue is wrapping around the muscles, and there are three main connective tissues that are very important for wrapping the muscles. And I already told you also about satellite cells and also the mitochondria and how important they are. Now I'm going to move again into the muscles, and I'm going to talk about these different layers of organization that explain how muscles work. In the beginning of this lecture, I start telling you that if you study the structure of a rope, instead of having one strand, you might have one strand that later is formed by multiple strands, that if you go and study each one of those strands is formed by even smaller and smaller strands, and there's something similar what happened with the muscle. Then I told you, look, to have the integrity of the muscle, to keep all this together, all these muscle fibers, you have to first attach it to a tendon, and then having different layers of connective tissue. And now we're moving into the big muscle, that is the fascicle, that is the most general section of the muscle, then the muscle fiber, the myofibril, and then to the sarcomere. So remember, if you want to study the layers of organization of a muscle, the most general will be the entire muscle that is divided in fascicles, and then muscle fibers, then myofibrils that are mainly the proteins, the filaments, and here you have the myofilaments, and finally you have the sarcomere. So let's start talking about each one of those, and I will show you the schematic of your textbook. I know it's a lot of names again, but you can stop it, go and give a look to your textbook, or watch the videos of your textbook. There is a lot of information there that it can help you to understand all this. To start, we're going to talk about fascicles. And if you see here, a fascicle is consists of different muscle fibers. So here you see a muscle fiber, and here you see another one, two, three, four muscle fibers, five muscle fibers, and all of them are bonded together. Yeah, and they are bonded together. Yeah, they are wrapped into a structure of connective tissue called and here you have it. Yes, perimysium, that allows them to work together as a whole. So remember, inside of each skeletal muscle, the muscle is organized into bundles that are called fascicle. And I also told you that surrounded the fascicles, you have connective tissue, and this connective tissue is called perimysium. So here you will have, let me put it in black. You will have one, two, three, four, five, and you can count, and there will be 10 fascicles, and all of them will be surrounded by this connective tissue that it will be the perimysium that we have here. Now let's go inside of the muscle fiber, and let's talk about a little bit about the endomysium. So we just talked about fascicles, and I told you that the fascicles are surrounded by perimysium, and that each fascicle uh, is formed by muscle fibers, and those muscle fibers will be also surrounded by a structure, a connective tissue called endomysium. Okay, and this organization is very common in different limbs uh, in humans, that you have all these bundles together in different groups surrounded by connective tissue. So remember, inside of each fascicle, what you're going to have is muscle fibers that they will be encased in a thin connective tissue layer, and this connective tissue layer, of course, will be collagen. Will have collagen and reticular fibers, and this is shown in green. That is the endomysium. And this type of fascicular organization is common in muscles of different limbs. We just finished talking about fascicles. We're done with this one. Now we're going to move into the next layer of organization, that it will be the muscle fibers. And let me use the marker to show you here, hopefully in blue. This is here. You see all of this structure is a muscle fiber. So here we have several muscle fibers. So if you count it, there will be five. One, two, three, four, and here this will be the fifth muscle fiber. And the muscle fibers are the basic unit of the muscle. They are arranged in bundles inside of the muscle, and the muscle is composed of numerous myofibrils. So yes, this one will be composed of other structures. So if you remember the Russian doll that I showed at the beginning, or the rope, this is the same idea. So there are a lot of myofibrils inside of the muscle fiber that are surrounded by connective tissue, and these muscle fibers will have the many muscle fibers will compose a fascicle, and many fascicles will compose a muscle. Okay, so all this has a similar structure. So just to summarize, This is the muscle fiber. Here are all these structures, and those muscle fibers can be considered the basic unit of the muscle, and the muscle fibers are arranged in bundles inside of the muscle, and muscle fiber are composed of numerous of myofibrils. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what are these myofibrils. The next step is the myofibrils, and here, so we move to the muscle fiber, the myofibrils, and here you can see the myofibrils as these circles that are inside of this muscle fiber. So here is the muscle fibril, and it's not a surprise to you that we can define myofibrils as the basic units of a muscle fiber. So myofibrils are the basic units of muscle fiber in the same way that muscle fibers are the basic units of fascicles, and fascicles are the basic unit of a muscle. Yeah, so all of this, as I said, is like the rope or the Russian dolls. And now, how we define a myofibril. So now we move into the next, into a microscopic level. So they are composed of thin and thick protein filaments, and those filaments are called myofilaments, and they are primary two, actin and myosin, that are the ones that are responsible of the muscle contraction in the next level, that it will be a sarcomere. So just to summarize all this information, I told you that we go we were in the muscle fiber, and each muscle fiber has as a basic unit many myofibrils, and that those myofibrils are composed of thin and thick proteins called myofilaments, that is the next level, and the primary proteins of the myofilaments are actin and myosin, that they will be responsible of the muscle contraction. So we are almost done. Now we are in the second last one, that is the myofilaments. And to see what is a myofilament, you can see inside of this square, you can see the thick filament and the thin filament, the myosin and actin contractile protein, sorry. And those proteins are organized in a very particular way. If you see here, we have the sarcomere, that is the next level of organization, the smallest one that we have, that we are going to study. And if you see each one of these sarcomeres, and I'm going to use a blue color here, this one is one sarcomere. It goes from here up to here, yeah? And so the next one will be here. And as I said before, you can have hundreds and hundreds in a muscle, yeah, in one myofilament. And, and as they are organized in such a specific way that you see one thick filament, then another thin filament, and then a thick filament, and all this organization, these bands, and we will talk about bands, talking about in the next section about talking sarcomeres. Those bands are the ones that give the appearance of the muscles, the skeletal muscles, to be striated. Yeah, so why the muscles are striated? If you remember in the beginning of the lecture, because when you go at the molecular level, the cellular level, the proteins are organized in a very particular way that allows them to produce the contractions. Okay, so I just told you that myofilaments are formed by contracted proteins, and that the organization of these proteins is what produce these appearance of striated protein of striated muscles. Now, I want to show you other structures because I told you that we zoom in a lot in this slide. So here you see the mitochondrion, yeah. So before we used to see it like a small structure. Here you see it in a lot of detail more. So we are seeing the cell, and this is like a very close up to the cell. Here you see the nucleus. So let me show you. Let's put it in black. Here you see one, oh, in yellow, one nucleus. Yeah, and here you can find another nucleus in yellow. Yeah, so question for you. If you have here mitochondria and nucleus, where is the cytoplasm? Yeah, so imagine this is the cell that have all these proteins, all the nucleus, the mitochondria, but where is the cytoplasm? So remember that the cell is very specialized. So the names change a little bit, and this cytoplasm here is called sarcoplasm. Yeah, so the cytoplasm of a striated muscle cell are called sarcoplasm. Here, now I'm going to put it, let's put it in purple. Here, this structure that you see here, yeah, is a myofibril that we just talked before. And here you find one, two, three, and each four, and the fifth one, half of this is here, and the other half is here. Okay, so finally, so we talk about nucleus, mitochondria, cytoplasm, and now we need to talk about the plasma membrane. And the plasma membrane of this muscle cell, let's put it here in black. Here is the sarcolemma. Yeah. So here the sarcolemma is the plasma membrane of the muscle cell, and is surrounded by the basement membrane and of course the endomysial connective tissue. And this sarcolemma is an excitable membrane, similar and share many properties with the neural cells membranes. Okay, so a lot of information, but just to finish, just to recap, I wanted to remind you that, oh, I almost forget about this our friend, the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and this is another modification of the muscle cell that is very specialized. As you need so much ATP, you need so much proteins, you had a lot of uh, endoplasmatic reticulum, and they call it here as is specialized is the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Yeah, and you can see it here in orange in all these structures surrounding the each one of these myofilaments, and they are there ready to produce more proteins. Okay, so now to recap, I told you that the myofilaments, this level of organization, is formed by contracting proteins that are in the myofibers, and those proteins are arranged into groups that can cause the cytoplasm to appear repeatedly or banded, and this is the reason why muscle cells are striated. Okay, so we're almost done. We are moving into the last section, that is the sarcomeres. So here you can see a zoom in of the sarcomere. Here you see already the two type of proteins. So here you see the thick filament that is the myosin. In addition to that, we can also see the thin filament that is the actin, and you can see it in the schematic. So the here you see it close to the S disc. Here, all this actin that have this specific organization. So in the following section of the class, we will talk about each one of these band and each one of these disc and how the myosin and actin work together and which other proteins we have there. Just from a very general perspective, I want that you remember that myofilaments are composed of repeated sections called sarcomeres. So here you have the myofilaments. Yeah, that is all this structure that is much longer. And here you have different sarcomeres. And we just got this image here, but if we continue, we will have another sarcomere here and another sarcomere here, and the same, it will be here, another sarcomere there. Also, their sarcomeres are responsible for muscle contraction. To finish this section, just remember that a sarcomere is the basic contractile unit of a muscular fiber, that each sarcomere is composed of two main proteins that you see there, thick filaments of myosin and thin filament of actin. And if you see in more detail later, we will talk about this one, the orange one, that is the elastic titan, and there will be more if we go into more detail, but you don't have to remember all of them in detail, but actin, myosin, titan will be something that are very important. And all these filaments are active structures that are responsible for the muscle structure. Okay, and we are done with all of those. I'm going to add some slides there to summarize the information in case that you needed to study. Those images are taken from your textbook. So very quick, I just wanted to show you that your textbook have great information to help you to study. So here, for example, it shows you the highest level of organization that we talk here. Here they also show you the level of organization of the muscle fascicle with all the components, and it's interactive in case that you want to study. Here you can see even more with the definition, with more information in case that you want to study. All that is in your textbook. Here we move into the myofibral and they have all the components. And here they have a definition in case that you want a more concise definition. And finally, we are moving into the sarcomere. Okay, so this is a lot of information. Now I want to show you a video that is going to talk about the sarcomere. That is the next topic of the next lecture. You can watch it, take a lot of notes, and this will summarize all the information for the following lecture, that it talk about how actin and myosin work together in the sarcomere to produce the muscle contraction. So I'm going to post this link so you can watch it. I couldn't include it in this video lecture because this video belonged to Wiley and I couldn't download it. So later I will put this in or in Moodle or in Populi so you can give it a look and you can watch it, or you can go to your textbook and just click there. It summarizes all the information in a very nice way. Okay, so we are done, and we talk about three main ideas. So the first idea is that I gave you an introduction. I told you before we start talking about muscles, we need to talk about bones and tendons, because the movement of the muscle contraction require of all this structure to be able to move the bones. Then I told you another important component is the connective tissue, because it's surrounding all this level of organization of the muscle, and we talk about three different connective tissues that are surrounding each one of these sections of the muscle. And finally, at the end, we went and studied all this level of organization of the muscle, and we went to the myofibrils, to the myofilaments, and then talk about the sarcomeres. And in the next lecture, we will talk about more in detail about how the sarcomere is able to produce the muscle contraction. In the following slides, I'm not going to talk. I just add a little bit of information with all the definitions that hopefully it can help you to clarify some things in case that you need it to study. Have a good day and bye.